Hi everybody. Today's painting is of a barn, and it's this barn. I made it smaller. I actually took the photograph and cut out the photo so that I could trace around it, and I did that. That's another way of copying a photo down to a piece of paper. Otherwise, if you want to make it larger, you can print it out to whatever size you want to, because printers, there's a lot of printer settings you probably all have. And then you can do what you want with it. I decided to make it smaller just so I'd have more background, because in this photo there's not a lot of background to it. So I also wanted to put a little road coming down, a fence, and just keep it a little smaller. I also didn't center it, you'll see that, and that's why I kind of made the road come this way, so that when you're looking at the paper, you see the barn sort of towards the middle, but it doesn't lead your eye directly up to the middle. You kind of have your eye going around this way, and it's kind of a nice composition that way. So anyway, we're going to start painting now, and I'm going to do wet on wet for the sky as I normally do, and then we'll let that dry, come back to it, and start on the foreground, this area here, with some greens and yellows, and get that road in there. So hopefully you would like to follow along. You won't have any trouble doing this. Obviously, if you have any questions, either email me, text me, whatever you want to do. I'm going to start out with this 1-inch brush. It's kind of crooked. I think I left it in the water, but I will fix it. It's my favorite brush, and it's flat, and it holds a lot of nice water, holds paint real nicely. And as you can see right here, I'm just dipping it into my water a little bit. I don't know if you can see right there. It's sitting in my water. So now I'm going to go ahead and paint. I'm gonna paint with water all of the sky, including the tree that's on the right side of the barn, including the tree line. And my paper's a little bit of an angle because of the fact that my drawing table is at a little bit of an angle. So you'll see that I'm gonna hold the paper up a little bit just when I'm doing this stuff that drips so much. I'm gonna use ultramarine blue to start out. Maybe a little Prussian. Prussian's a lot brighter, has a little bit more green to it, as you can see. See how much green Prussian has in it? It's a lot greener, but it's got a nice bright look to it. So I'm gonna put that in there. Maybe a little bit more ultramarine. Obviously, I'm not trying to follow what the photograph looks like. I like to develop my own skies. As you all know, I've done this many times. I like to just see how the paint, paper, and water can work together to form its own kind of sky. That's what wet on wet is for. It's about floating your paint onto the paper and just kind of letting it do its own thing. I might add a little bit of ochre, which is this pinky red. That's the color that you could never get by trying to mix it. Here, put a little purple in there, over here, and then I'll take some straight ochre and get that in there, just through here a little bit, just to add some color. Now I'm gonna have to find something to prop this up so that it dries flat, and we'll go on to our next step. So now is the perfect time to talk about cauliflowers, which I have here and here. And in the sky, they don't always matter too much, so I might even make the tree line come up to meet that at some point, or do something with the tree line here so that that won't be so prominent. But right now, I'm not going to worry about it, and I'm going to do some wet on wet on the foreground. So we'll do that, and we'll do the road, and hopefully we won't get these cauliflowers again. So I will start the wet on wet process down here. I'm going to do some greens and yellows. I'm going to go with olive first. So I got that mixed up. Now I'm going to go with the wet on wet through here. I'm going to keep the pathway from getting wet though. A little bit of green in the path or in the foreground is okay because the water is a little bit green just because I rinsed out my brush in there, but that's okay, not a problem. We'll just work at it from there. I'm not getting the barn wet, just the foreground. And if you need paper towels, keep them handy. I want it to have quite a bit of wetness to it. Glossy wet is good. Just make sure you have a lot of paint on your brush when you go to put it on the wet on wet. That'll probably help with the cauliflowers. I'm going to go right over the fence posts too because you really are going to make the fence post probably darker than the foreground, so that's okay. I'm going with a sap green here. Also going to put a little bit of Prussian in there to darken it in a couple spots. I'm also going to get more yellow in a few spots. So let's put in a little bit of Prussian mixed with the sap to darken it up a little. And here's a little bit of yellow mixed with the green to get kind of a limey color, which is kind of nice too, just through here, just to get a little bit more variation to the foreground so it's not just one color. You don't want to just have it be that one color. Just add some Prussian, add some sap, add some olive, and add some yellow. Those are the 4 colors. Doesn't matter quite how you do it, just so that it looks something like that with your greens in there. So if this was going to be a painting on how to get cauliflowers, this would be it, because here's another one down here. I'm not sure what's going on today. I guess I'm not using enough paint, because usually it's if you don't have enough paint in the brush and you have more water in the brush. But that's okay, because now I can show you what to do with them in case you get them. So this can be more of a learning experience than I thought. So now I'm going to go and put some yellow ochre into the path right here. I am not going to do any more wet on wet because of the fact that I've got the background and the foreground already done. And usually once I do wet on wet, I don't go back into it with wet. So it's a one-time thing in either 1 or 2 different areas. I usually only do it in the large areas. But this will be some fun stuff to fix later, so not to worry, we'll get into that better later. Now I'm going to use one of my round brushes. It's the one that I call the fingertip brush because it's about the size of my fingertip, maybe a little bit narrower. So I'm going to go with some yellow ochre, which is your peanut butter color. I keep it right over here. I'm going to go into that path with that. Again, it's not wet. It's just dry. When you go on dry like this, and you don't play around with it too much, you probably won't get cauliflowers. But I shouldn't say anything today because I've been getting them a lot today. I'm going to go back in there with a little bit of burnt sienna just to add a little more color to it. Up in through here. It'll dry lighter than I'm painting because that always happens. Everything always dries lighter. I'm not using any hair dryers today because I don't need to, because I'm not trying to speed anything up. I don't like to use hair dryers except in the classroom because of the fact that it really does lighten the colors and dries too fast sometimes. Put a little bit of burnt umber in here too just to add some variety, and we'll see how that little road looks later. I'm going to go into the barn now. I'm going to take some burnt umber, but a really light burnt umber mixed with just a little bit of ultramarine blue. So it kind of makes a brownish gray. See it right there? And I'm going to go through here and just get that color in there above the stonework on the barn. And I'm not going to do the roof line so much. I'm going to keep that white. If you wanted to do any mascoid, I would say the only place you'd need to do it would be right in through here. But that's not super white anyway, so I'm not going to do it. But if you wanted to, you could. Not a problem. I'm going to go with a little bit of a reddish, like almost a pinkish through here, to just get a little color, a little hue in there. I used just a little bit of my opera mixed with a little bit of brown there. And over here there's a red roof too. I don't know where that really leads to because it's off the page, but I can put a little bit of red in there, just kind of brighten it up a little bit in there, through there. I'm not going on this side of the roof yet because of the fact that it's too close to the barn and I don't want it to bleed into the barn. So I'll wait for this to dry a little bit and then we'll go back into it in other places. Now I have a smaller brush, which is, I don't know what number it is, because they're all different numbers for different brands of brushes. And I'm gonna go and I'm gonna put some light colors in the stonework here, just to get some color in there. So yellow ochre and a little bit of burnt umber, just kind of combined, just to make it a little bit more on the yellower side than the barn itself is. You can paint right over that little window area because it's going to be darker anyway. And I'm not being too fussy about the painting. And then I'm going to go back into the silo with a little bit of burnt sienna and a little bit of yellow ochre, just to put that color in there, because it's really I don't know, kind of a concrete look, but you want to make it a little bit brighter than what it really looks like. And then I'm going to get some more grayish brown over in this barn area here that I added to because it kind of cuts off on the right side or the left side of the page, so I want to just put it in there like that. So now we've got most of it painted. Then I want to go and put some more reddish color into the silo roof, because we didn't finish that earlier because the barn was still wet. So I'm just kind of mixing up something that looks a little reddish. Just add some red to some blue or some red to some brown. Colors aren't as important as values are. You could change the color of this whole barn if you wanted to. It doesn't have to be these colors. That's the beauty of painting, as long as you get the values right, because you want to get the shadows, you want to get the values so that you can see what's going on. So I don't always follow the colors exactly, and that's okay. Don't need to. I'm going to make a darker color for that underneath shadow. Well, maybe not yet because it's still wet on the silo. So since the silo area is still wet, I don't want to go and paint underneath the silo roof yet, because all that's going to do is make it blend like I don't want it to. So I'm just going to put a little bit of dark right through here to start that shadow. And then I think I will go and put a little bit of a shadow underneath the roof of the barn, because you can see there's a shadow area here. Oops, I'm sorry, it's not out of view. Right here there's a shadow area, so I'm going to start doing that right under here. If you can't see the painting because the brush is in the way, don't worry, because I'll move my brush in just a minute and you'll be able to see what I just did. I just put that shadow area in there. Looks a little harsh right now, but it won't. Once we start to get some more texture into the wood of the barn, we're going to try to get that barnwood look. Going with the edge of my brush and just doing a little bit of a line like that. I think I'll start to do some tree line over here while I'm waiting for other things to dry, because you want to keep on working if you can, but you don't want to work next to things that are wet, because you don't want to have to worry about getting the colors blending together or running together if you don't want them to. So I'm taking this brush, again the fingertip brush, and I'm going to go over into this area a little bit, get some greens in there. There's also some browns in there, so I'm going to go into my burnt sienna, which is my reddish brown. I might even add a little bit more reddish to it, just to add some more color to it up through here. And you can let that blend with your green. That's okay, because you're trying to get a more blended look here. And that's fine. Go back with some greens and some blues. I like to mix greens and blues with browns in nature. It's kind of cool. Usually ends up looking pretty cool. So that's kind of our base for our tree line over there. And notice the cauliflower we made before is getting a little bit less, and we will make it less even later too. And then I'm going to go over here on the left side of the barn by the roof, get some of those, the trees through here, these trees right here, get that put in there with some yellow ochre. Just kind of remember we've bounced the brush, we've bounced the brush. We've done this before. Bounce the brush. It's different than painting, and it gives you a totally different technique. I'm just kind of touching it, just with little dots and kind of letting those dots blend together, because you don't want to get, you want to keep some air and some room in there so you can put the branches in later. Now I'm also going to take and fix up the foreground a little bit. I'm going to use the same colors I used before, but we're just going to go a little step darker with them. Make sure you have a lot of paint in your brush so you don't get more cauliflowers. I'm going to go through here. I'm just kind of taking the tip of my brush and making some grassy looks to it, because I think that's what you want to do in the foreground here. Just some grassiness to the color. You want to get some golds with yellow ochre. You want to get some greens with sap, some greens with olive. You just kind of do them all over the place. Get real close to that path. And the fence posts kind of go between them. We'll add some more around the fence posts later, you'll see. I'm going to go a little bit darker towards the barn just to kind of add some dimension through here, which kind of will be cool. There's a dirt area on the left side of the barn right through here, but I don't really want to put that in because it's kind of muddy looking. And why do we want muddy looking? We don't. So we're going to go through here, just kind of bring that around. And I might take my bigger brush too, get some bigger areas of these greens. I'm just kind of mixing greens and blues together and some yellows, just kind of getting some nature colors that would appear in the grass, because really important to just kind of have a random look to it. You don't want to get too tight with this right now. You just want to stay loose. It's the barn that's going to be your center of interest, because that's where the detail is going to be mostly. So you want to have some kind of a nice foreground in terms of color. You want it to be really pleasing to the eye. So that's starting to look a little better. It doesn't look great yet, but remember, your painting is not going to look great till it's done, because in the middle of painting, it's not done yet. So we don't get great results in the middle of a painting. Don't ever judge your painting right now, because that doesn't look like anything yet. It will. Once the details get in there, it'll be great. I'm going to wait for a few more things to dry, and then we'll go back and get into the barn, put some detail in there. So I started to put a little more detail into the barn, and I'm going to show you some more that I will do. I started to put a little bit of dimension in here by putting some brown burnt umber in there, and some black right here with a fine line, black right here with a really fine line right up against that roof line. Now I'm going to make a darker gray and go in with the gray to do that darker area underneath the roof line, which is right through here. Let's get a little darker even. Taking a gray by mixing your burnt umber and ultramarine, but making it more of a grayish than a black. It's the same colors we used to make black, but not the same amounts. So you're not making it as dark as a black, but you want to get that color in there. Now see that I'm messing up my white or my light trim on there, but we'll go back to that later with a thin brush and put that back in. Don't worry if you didn't do that. I also made a little door here. There's not really a door there, but I thought it needed something. So you can do whatever you want with your barn. Put a door, put a window. So now I'm going to get into putting some color into this wood grain of the barn to make it look like barnwood. So what I usually do is just take a bunch of colors with a small brush and do some vertical strokes. and they can mix and match. They can stop halfway. Some browns, some purples, some blues, just kind of go back and forth on top of each other. And it will give you the look of old barnwood eventually. It takes a bit to get there, but you will. A little bit of red in there, a little bit of purple. Of course you have to have purple in everything, we know that. More burnt sienna. Just kind of brush stroke down and go over the colors you've already done. You just want the variation of the colors. And if it doesn't have enough variation, wait till it dries before you go back into it. So that doesn't quite have all the variation I like. So I'm gonna go back into it in a bit, and then we'll put some more vertical lines in there with thinner strokes. I also wanna do some of the rock formations. So I'm gonna, they're not all the same. The rocks don't all look the same. Some of them are different values. So I'm just gonna kind of take a small brush. Since this is a pretty small barn, you just wanna give the indication of rocks. You don't have to get them perfect. If I was doing this like to this size, I would wanna paint more detail in the rocks. But we're gonna get detailed enough so that you're gonna be able to tell they're rocks without getting too detailed, because you really can't because they're so small. So if you just do that for now, just some little splotches of color, and we'll go back in there later and put some dimension in there by putting some dark lines where the grout would be and all that. You want to fill it in a little. And then over here is barnwood too, so you're going to kind of do the same thing you just did on the barn. Different colors. Some strokes don't have to go all the way up and down. Blues, greens, reds, whatever you want it to be, it'll be. That's not awfully dark blue, but that's okay. You can wet it and make it more grayed down. Maybe even a turquoisey color in there just for some difference. You can do whatever you want. There's no wrong or right on this barnwood. So if you can see that, a lot of color in there. As this part of the barn dries, I'm going to start getting more color in there again. I like some of that turquoisey color I just put in, so I'll probably do some of that. Maybe a little bit more green. A little bit thinner stroke this time so that you see all the colors that you've put in there. Really kind of cool when you start to see it really takes on a look of its own. And your barn will look totally different than mine because they always look different. And then I'm going to go back over here, put a little bit more red in this one probably. So now I'm going to let that dry. We're going to get back into the silo in a little bit and start to detail the grass a little bit, get some more detail up here in the trees, and probably just a little bit more and we'll be done. So now I've done a couple things since the last portion of the video. I put some darker streaks in the barn. I also got a little darker right underneath this roof line, put a few lines in this roof, put one brush stroke with my small flat brush down here just to get that shadow. Put a little bit of a shadow over here too. And I started to paint in a little bit more of the tree with a little bit more color and put a few branches in here with a thin brush. So now what I'm going to do is put some greens into the foreground to start to get the grassy areas going. I've got my big flat brush again because I really like that for some of this stuff. So what I'm going to do is make a few horizontal lines on here with sap and with olive. Just a few, just to kind of break it up a little bit. And then I'm going to take The flat brush comes to a really nice edge right here. It just makes a really nice fine edge. So you can do some grass with that just by going like this. You can't do the real thin grasses, but you can start to get the grassy shapes with that. And the blues, you can put some blues in there to darken it up a little bit. And you can, we'll get some smaller brush strokes in there in a few minutes. I want to get around this fence area too, because we're going to put a fence post in there. Now this, I'm going to try to spruce up the sky a little bit by putting some turquoise in there. Just right where these trees are going to go. Now that it's all dry, we shouldn't have a problem getting some color in there, because I'm going to use more of a ultramarine blue in there and a little bit of a turquoise through here too, just to kind of cover those marks up that we made. I want to blend it into what we already have so I don't create hard edges, which I take a brush that's been wet and then dried a little and just kind of fluff it into the rest of your sky, what you already have going on there, so you don't create a hard line. And once we get the tree going in here, this stuff will look a little better. Hopefully. We can only hope. But yeah, by just adding a little bit more blue to the sky, kind of dabbing it, it just will make the sky look a little bit better. And then down here, once we get these grassy lines in there, that'll go away too, that cauliflower. I think what you're hearing downstairs is my dog. She needs to be fed, so I'm going to go feed her and I will return and finish up. Okay, I'm going to put the fence posts in. I'm going to start with brown. Either burnt sienna or burnt umber, it doesn't really matter. But I have them drawn in there, and you can put them wherever you want. If you even want to put them in, you don't have to. I think there was one here. There was one over here. And one over here. And the green's not quite dry, but that's all right. I'll let it go for now. See what happens. You can always dab it with a paper towel too on the sides, on the edges where the green isn't dry. And then I'm going to go back into my trees up here, try to spruce them up a little bit with some oranges and some reds, just to get a little bit more color in there so that they don't look so bland. Over here, same. Just going to put a little bit of red towards the top, maybe a little orange. Because if you see on the picture that I sent to you, it does get a little orangey on the top. Just kind of adds to the colors in the picture. If you want to add a little more red to the roof line, a little orange, just to get a little bit more warmth in that roof line because it's kind of drab, just add a little like that. Just kind of spruces it up just a bit. Now I'm going to do some grass with a thinner brush stroke down through here. And I'm taking my small brush, which also gets flat. I don't know how you can see this. It's a flat brush, or it can be round. It's both. Right now I've got it made into a flat brush, so the edge that it creates, the point, creates nice grass lines, real thin. See how that goes? So by putting that over some of the grass you've already put in, oops, that didn't work. It really adds some nice, you have to make sure that the paint's not super wet if you want a thin line. It has to be pretty concentrated. And you can just kind of go real, you start by putting your paintbrush on the paper kind of hard and then lift up and lighten your touch on the paper, and it gives you a nice fine line at the end. Crisscross them, make them work like that. And then you can add some blues, because blues added to greens always make a nice dark green. I'm going to go over here where I did that cauliflower mess before, so it will kind of disguise it a little bit, hopefully. And then change colors often with these grass blades. Go from green to brown to blue. Wait till you see what that does. Now I'm going to go with some browns. Again, make sure it's not super wet, because you want to create the fine lines. And you go right in between what you already have done. And the grass blades get smaller and lighter as they go back, because you're seeing the more detailed ones towards the front of your painting. You can even add a little red in there, a little orange, just to brighten it up a little bit. See that? I'll hold it closer to the camera in a bit. Again, blues will really work well to add to the green, just to make, they look like darker grass that way. And you're getting, I'll bring this closer to the camera. See how you're getting all those various colors in there? I'm going to do the same over on the side, on the right side. And then we'll work on the path a little bit more to make it look more like a path. And then you want to go over your path a little bit with some grass, because the grass wouldn't just stop at the path. So you want to have that kind of covered a little bit by the path. You can also put a little bit of a line over here, so it kind of looks like it's worn a little bit here. And then I would also make a little darker line right underneath that grass line I just made, just to make it look like it's a little bit more dimensional right through here. And I'm using a blue to do that. And then over here on the left side, put a little bit of darkness just right through here, just to kind of create a little bit of a dimension with shadow area here, so it just looks like it's not just a flat path. You can also hit it with some other colors in through there, just to kind of rough it up a little, make it even look like it's more dirt, with your browns and your blacks and your blues, even some greens, just so it doesn't look perfectly, you know, modeled and blended. You don't want it to look too perfect. It should have some roughness to it, because it's probably a well-traveled path that goes off to this barn, and that's what gives it its interest and its texture. So even some purpley colors here and there are fine. And then as it goes further back, you can get a little bit more concentrated in that color and in the little textures. So that kind of starts out real dense and gets a little bit more sparse as it comes towards you. See that? How that works? And you can even put off some dirt off into the grass if you want, just to kind of add a little bit of interest, so it doesn't look so like so much of a hard edge on that path. I'm going to go back and revise the fence post a little bit. And then I think we're almost done. That tree though, this tree here we got to do, so we'll do that too. So I'm going to take and I'm going to make the shadowed edge of the fence post on the right side, because of the fact that the barn, the shadow for the silo is on the right side. It's not a real sunny day in this picture, so we're not looking for a lot of sun. Just looking for a little bit of a shadow, just to add some interest, so that it's not just all one value. And then I'm going to put in that tree. I'm going to take some blue and some brown, get it real dark, because It's almost black. And make that tree come right out of that barn area, right up into the sky. You don't want to put too many branches in there because it can be overkill. And just kind of put your branches in there. Again, bring your paintbrush to a point with a lot of concentrated paint in there, because that way you'll be able to get a little thinner. I'm going for thin right now. I've got enough thick. Like I say, you don't want to get too much in there. It'll just be overkill. So you're trying to get real thin branches right now. So whatever you have to do to get them really thin. I've sometimes even cheated and used a very thin Sharpie to get real tiny thin marks. But you don't want them to look too dark. You don't want it to look like Sharpie, so you got to be careful. Even like a brown Sharpie is okay. Then it turns your watercolor into a mixed media painting, but that's okay. Sometimes you just do what you have to do. Get those thin lines in there. Put a few more thin lines over in this tree. Just to kind of get that going. I want to fix this little roof line thingy that's over here. It's like a little cupola thing. Whatever you call that. Just so it looks like part of the structure. And then I think we're about done. A couple little things I want to do. I want to make sure that the eave of the barn has a little bit of color to it right through here. Sometimes I just like to put a stroke of color into the piece. So why not some red? Let's take a little red. Just kind of, I get real creative, real bold when I do this sometimes. A little bit of red right through here. A little bit of red right through here. Just kind of adds to the painting. And I'm going to take a little bit of yellow, a bold yellow. And I'm just going to kind of go like this with the yellow on the silo. That's a little much yellow. So I'm going to take and wipe off my brush. Take and wipe off my brush. And go like this. Just added a little bit of color to that silo. See how that worked? So now I have a little bit of red in the barn, a little bit of yellow in the silo. And that's about done. The only thing I'm going to do now is add some barbed wire between those fence posts. Tiny, tiny little brush. Brown and blue to make it black. Really, really thin barbed wire. Even have it go off the page a little bit. Just a little like that. And then if you want to do another and to make it real barbed, all you got to do is a couple little strokes. And then I'm going to put a couple little blades of grass right at the bottom part of the fence post to finish it up. So that it doesn't just look like it's sitting on top of the grass. And that should do it. You still need a little bit more shadow area on the left side of those fence posts. I think I'll take a little bit of blue to do that. Just to splice it up a little bit more. A little bit of darkness down at the bottom of this barn. A little bit darker here at the very corner where the silo meets the barn on this side. I think that'll help a little there. So it makes it look a little bit more rounded. Oh, there's also some grassy stuff going on right in front of the silo. You'll notice that too. So let's take care of that. Again, small brush. Oh, that adds a lot to it. And if I do anything else, after I think I'm finished and turn the video off, I will make sure I make note of it on my painting. Because you'll be getting still shots of this too. I've been taking pictures along the way. So that you'll get all that in there. A little bit of brown through there. So there it is. Hopefully you got a nice painting out of it. It's been fun. I will send you the video when it gets put up onto the Facebook page and to YouTube from COD, and I will also be sending you still pictures of it as well throughout the process. Have fun, keep painting, stay safe.